The American Civil War. The American Civil War remains the most devastating conflict in the history of the United States. Between 1861 and 1865, more than 600,000 Americans lost their lives. Entire cities were destroyed, families were torn apart, and the nation stood on the edge of collapse. This war would determine whether the United States would survive as a single nation, and what principles that nation would ultimately stand for. To understand the Civil War, it is necessary to look far beyond the battlefield. A nation divided by the mid-19th century, the United States was deeply divided along economic, social, and political lines. The northern states were rapidly industrializing. Factories produced goods at an unprecedented scale. Railroads connected major cities, and immigration fueled population growth. The northern economy relied largely on wage labor and manufacturing. In contrast, the southern states remained primarily agricultural. Cotton was the backbone of the southern economy, and its production depended on enslaved labor. By 1860, nearly 4 million enslaved African Americans lived in the South, forming the foundation of its economic system. This divide created two very different societies within one nation. The North increasingly viewed slavery as morally wrong and economically outdated. The South viewed slavery as essential to its survival and prosperity. At the heart of the conflict was a single question: could slavery continue to exist and expand in the United States? The struggle for political power. As the nation expanded westward, new territories sought statehood. Each new state threatened to tip the balance of power in Congress. If free states gained the majority, slavery could be restricted or abolished. If slave states maintained control, slavery would be protected. To avoid conflict, politicians repeatedly turned to compromise. The Missouri Compromise attempted to maintain balance. The Compromise of 1850 delayed confrontation. But these measures addressed the symptoms, not the cause. By the 1850s, violence began erupting even before the war. In Kansas, pro-slavery and anti-slavery settlers fought each other in what became known as Bleeding Kansas. The nation was already at war in everything but name. The election of Abraham Lincoln. In 1860, the United States elected Abraham Lincoln as president. Lincoln was born into poverty, raised on the frontier, and largely self-educated. He believed slavery was morally wrong and opposed its expansion into new territories. Lincoln did not call for the immediate abolition of slavery where it already existed, but his election alarmed Southern leaders. For the first time, a president had been elected without the support of the South. To Southern politicians, this meant the loss of influence and the eventual destruction of their way of life. In December 1860, South Carolina seceded from the Union. Within months, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas followed. These states formed the Confederate States of America, electing Jefferson Davis as president. The first shots. Abraham Lincoln refused to recognize secession as legal. He believed the Union was permanent and indivisible. Tensions centered on federal military installations located within Confederate territory. One of these was Fort Sumter, located in Charleston Harbor. In April 1861, Confederate artillery opened fire on the fort. After 34 hours of bombardment, Union forces surrendered. Though no soldiers were killed in the battle, its significance was unmistakable. The Civil War had begun. Lincoln called for 75,000 volunteers to suppress the rebellion. Instead of restoring unity, this action pushed 4 additional states, Virginia, Arkansas, Tennessee, and North Carolina, to join the Confederacy. Virginia's decision was particularly important. It brought with it General Robert E. Lee, one of the most capable military officers in the nation. Robert E. Lee and the Confederacy. Robert E. Lee was a graduate of West Point and a veteran of the Mexican-American War. He was respected across the country and was offered command of the Union Army by President Lincoln. Lee declined. Though he opposed secession and personally considered slavery a moral evil, he believed loyalty to his home state outweighed loyalty to the federal government. Lee's decision gave the Confederacy a brilliant military leader. Both sides believed the war would be brief. Early battles and disillusionment. The first major battle of the war occurred in July 1861 at Bull Run, near Washington. D.C. Union forces were defeated and retreated in disorder. The defeat shattered illusions of a short conflict. In 1862, the war intensified. In the Western Theater, Union General Ulysses S. Grant launched a series of successful campaigns along key rivers. At the Battle of Shiloh, Confederate forces surprised Union troops. Fighting raged for 2 days. When the battle ended, over 23,000 men were killed or wounded. The scale of death shocked the nation. Leadership struggles in the East. In the East, Lincoln struggled to find a commander willing to aggressively pursue Confederate forces. General George McClellan reorganized the Union Army, but hesitated repeatedly, allowing Lee to escape destruction. In September 1862, Lee invaded Maryland, hoping to gain foreign recognition and force a negotiated peace. A lost copy of Lee's battle plans fell into Union hands, leading to the Battle of Antietam. Antietam became the bloodiest single day in American history. More than 23,000 soldiers were killed or wounded. Though tactically inconclusive, the battle forced Lee to retreat south. The Emancipation Proclamation President Lincoln used Antietam as an opportunity to redefine the war. In January 1863, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring enslaved people in Confederate territory free. The proclamation transformed the war into a fight against slavery. It allowed African Americans to enlist in the Union Army, where nearly 200,000 would eventually serve. It also prevented European powers from supporting the Confederacy. Gettysburg and Vicksburg. In the summer of 1863, Lee launched another invasion of the North. Union and Confederate armies met at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. For 3 days, the battle raged. Key positions such as Little Round Top and Cemetery Ridge became scenes of desperate fighting. On the third day, Lee ordered a massive frontal assault known as Pickett's Charge. It failed disastrously. Gettysburg resulted in more than 50,000 casualties and marked a decisive turning point. At the same time, Grant captured Vicksburg, giving the Union control of the Mississippi River and splitting the Confederacy in two. Total war. Grant was promoted to command all Union armies. His strategy was simple: constant pressure. In the East, Grant pursued Lee relentlessly through Virginia. Battles at the Wilderness, Spotsylvania, and Cold Harbor resulted in enormous casualties. Grant did not retreat. In the West, General William Tecumseh Sherman captured Atlanta and launched his March to the Sea, destroying infrastructure and resources critical to the Confederate war effort. Sherman's campaign broke the South's ability to continue fighting. The end of the war. By 1865, Confederate forces were exhausted. Supplies were gone. Desertion increased. Union forces captured Petersburg and Richmond. Lee attempted to escape but was surrounded. On April 9, 1865, Lee surrendered to Grant at Appomattox Courthouse. Grant offered generous terms, allowing Confederate soldiers to return home peacefully. The war was over. Lincoln's assassination and legacy. 5 days later, President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated at Ford's Theater. The nation mourned. The Civil War preserved the Union, ended slavery, and permanently altered the balance of power between states and the federal government. It was a conflict born of division and a reminder of the cost of disunity. The United States emerged forever changed.